Hello everyone, this is Chase Pounds. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing the 1879 mass exodus to Kansas. Now, I know I've been behind in discussing some of the topics for Black History Month, mainly because I was a bit busy the past few weeks, and I wasn't make time to make it try to keep my videos within the month of Black History Month like I planned, but I finished my making it up. And this now, what brought me to this topic of that I'm getting ready to discuss is on my calendar, my Black History calendar. I showed you in my previous video on on the Christmas gifts I received. One was a Black History calendar. One of them discusses the on the second month of February discusses a famous figure named as Pat as Benjamin Pap Singleton. He's known for helping sponsoring the or contributing, or I should say sponsoring or contributing to the short-lived mass exodus of blacks from the deep south all the way to Kansas. I had some prior knowledge of this event. A previous, I think, browsed it on the internet back in 2015 when I was about a junior year of high school. I was kind of was researching the Great Migration, and one of the things in this that was mentioned prior to the Great Migration was that there was a another migration underway going back to the 19th century at at the post Civil War era, and the this was a mass migration that took place that was short lived. That took place from 1879 to 1880, and it was attempts by people from the north, including this person, including the person I mentioned, Benjamin Pap Singleton, who was a abolitionist who was born a slave near Nashville, and escaped out of slavery and made his way to north. I think it was Ohio, I think, if I remember correctly, based on the information I read. And he kind of what he did was he uh, when this was after when slavery ended, that he went, I believe, down south to get blacks to he had like pamphlets or brochures of some sort where he talked about the conditions and the opportunities up north for blacks, yeah, in a way of trying to persuade them to maybe to migrate to north in places like Kansas, and which at the which as I mentioned other the previous in the previous video that about Reconstruction, after the Civil War was the period when Reconstruction was a period at the Civil War when the South was being built fiscally and politically, and there was attempts to try to get blacks freedom and equality and rights to vote. This was under the 13th, 14th Amendment, 14, 15 to 13, 14, 15 Amendment, that blacks were all free, being no longer slaves. Also trying to give them the rights to vote and citizenship. Unfortunately, this was, even though there was temporary attempts to give black these basic rights, it was short lived. As it was short-lived as the South tried to establish, and the South as Southern Democrats tried to establish black codes to keep blacks from gaining these rights. And this is also met with intimidation, particularly by as I mentioned before, the emerging Ku Klux Klan or KKK, and this is also filled with these issues, along with continuing poverty as well as violence, that some blacks thought was best that they find better opportunities elsewhere in the north and west, in parts of the United States. So with this exodus of, again, with the work of Benjamin Singleton, as well as other abolitionists, as well as some other abolitionists that I don't know. I think Frederick Douglass had some part in it, but he had some disagreements with the idea of this mass migration. They persuaded blacks with pamphlets and brochures to move. There was to move to the north between 1879 and 1880. Though this was met with issues, as even though they were able to get blacks to move out of the South, some didn't, however, didn't make it to Kansas, but made their way to St. Louis, and unfortunately were met with his dilemmas, such as there's a lot of blacks, such as a lot of ferry boats, when allowed a lot of blacks to board the boat. A lot of the steamship captains would allow the blacks to board the ferry boats, which took them ferry boats, because I guess racial intolerance and bias, discrimination at that time, and that many remained in St. Louis. Some blacks and whites tried to help, and while other blacks at the same time also agreed that they had no reason to move. I think to move to Kansas. And some were stuck and remained in St. Louis for a time. Though unfortunately it was also met with backfire from the South, as whites tried to dispel the idea that that the conditions down south weren't bad, as they were publicized in newspaper reports and tried to dispel the idea that of disenfranchisement among blacks, and he actually believed that a lot of the people who were migrating were rebel-rousing troublemakers in their perspective, which wasn't the case. And many black politicians in the South also took the sides of the Southern Democrat whites as well. As I mentioned before, this small man's grave, early attempt to migration of blacks from the South to the North was temporarily short-lived between 1879 and about 1880, as you had blacks who left the South from places such as Mississippi, Louisiana, and I think also Tennessee. This was only ended temporarily, and this would become because of the first migration of blacks, mass migration of blacks to leave the South, until South at that from that point on, there wasn't that you only had blacks that probably migrated in small numbers, but there wasn't a mass migration until the 20th century, but during until the um until the outbreak of World War I. Outbreak of World War I is again there was a resurgence in violence again with the emergence of the second KKK, where it was where there was this resurgence again in violence and lynching, which persuaded many blacks to move to the urban north, again primarily in northern northeastern cities as well as in cities in the Midwest, again such as St. Louis, my hometown of St. Louis, Chicago, further out east in Philadelphia, Boston, Baltimore, New York, New Jersey, playing some of the places that many blacks migrated to, and which the Great Migration would continue between the 19 teens to the 1920s until the 30s with the Great Depression, and migration for blacks kind of, I guess, deceased or decreased for that time period. Though you will see a resurgence again in migration, which was sometimes referred to as the second Great Migration, where you had blacks that again once again moved moved to the northern urban cities as well. You had some blacks moving out west to California, such as L.A. And primarily these people who left the South, people from Texas, might primarily left to the West Coast in at Los Angeles, while the Midwest you have people blacks that migrate from Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana to places such as St. Louis and Chicago, while places such as the Carolinas or Georgia primarily migrate to East Coast cities such as Philadelphia and New York. And migration again will continue through the 1940s all the way up to the mid six all the way to the 60s with the civil rights movement. My grandparents would be, I think, would be a recipient of that that era, the second migration. My grandmother moved from Tupelo, Mississippi, to St. Louis, Missouri. 1951. I think she took a bus from Tupelo to St. Louis. Mostly people traveled primarily by train, though you had people who traveled by foot, horse and buggy, eventually cars, buses, but primarily by train. And with the Great Migration, you have an influential culture. It would have an influence on the urban culture in the north. And north and opportunities, as well as some cases there was good opportunities for blacks to get better jobs and better housing. Though some mainly when coming to these urban cities mainly settled in urban inner cities, which would be kind of referred to as ghettos or projects of that sort. So again, the Great Migration was again as a way of trying to get away from as a way of forming resistance or avoiding or getting away from acts of violence and the ongoing Jim Crow and poverty in the Deep South. Yeah. But this was but that's my video on the mass exodus. Again, this was the story I heard on a calendar I had on my Black History calendar, and I had prior knowledge of this. That was a kind of interesting story. And Benjamin Pap Singleton was I think in the article was dubbed the one of the 100 greatest influential African American figures. That's another video by Chase Pound. Stay tuned for the next video.